Hello, folks. How are you today? We are here live to talk about the webinar launch formula. Do me a favor, as soon as you see this, give me a shout out and let me know that you can see my screen and you can hear the audio. I'd love to know and make sure that there's no doubled up audio, anything of that nature. And I'm waiting here for the final approval. It says, Susan tells me the sound is good. I'm gonna show y'all my face. And hello, how are you? Welcome to my humble little studio here. And if you could see everything around me, I think you might have a bit of a chuckle. And you don't need a lot of space to do these kinds of events, to do these webinars. You don't need what I'm doing here with this this whole Wirecast setup. GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, Zoom, and then there's Google Hangouts, although I'm not sure about that. Zoom is a really good option. It's really easy to get out there and get yourself out there and start to make an impact. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how you create a webinar that wins. All right. So I want you to have some questions ready for me. I'm going to have a call to action. But most importantly, we're also going to want to make sure that you've covered your bases and you've done your work from yesterday. Not a lot of time, right? But I want to make sure that you get an ask out there into the community. If it's just simply you saying, what do you want to learn about X? I want to know what that is. I want to see what that is that people are replying to. Ruben has already done this, which is awesome. So we'll look at Ruben's, I think, today. But let's take a look at the screen. And let me just confirm that everything is good. So my audio looks good there. Susan said it's good. But I do not have a chat. So there you go. Put a note in chat and we will make sure they're good. Okay. And in the comments here. All right, Hussein, thank you. Okay, so let's get ourselves moving. Turn the audio off so we're not getting two duplicates. Let me just pause everything because you can always get yourself in trouble in so many different ways doing this. Okay. All right, do me a favor, Susan, give me another shout out. Let me know the audio is okay. It's like my big worry. Okay. All right. So today we talk about webinars and how to make a webinar that wins. All right. You are in the right place if you're good at something. If you want to launch an online class, if you tried to do this before, if you know you got your head stuck up in, your own universe, and if you're tired, I'll get that phrase out, tired of trading time for dollars. If you're tired of that, you're in the right place. All right. We're going to talk about how to create a webinar that wins, but specifically, we're going to talk about what I call a value webinar. And this is really an important part of this whole webinar launch formula. We're going to work on a value webinar, not a sales webinar. A sales webinar always involves a call to action that is focused on sales. And if you focus on sales right away, what does that do? If you even bring up the word sale or the word product, or if you hear that from somebody, what does that do to you? Physiologically, what does that do? If you're like most people, it puts you in a totally different mode. Now you're wary, right? Now you're thinking, oh, what do I have to get? I'm looking for the second note that the audio is good. Okay. You start to wonder, how much? What's it going to cost? Should I still be here if it's going to cost and something's right? Anytime money's involved or something like that, there's one of my coaches said that your offer is the biggest threat to your customer because it's threatening to take money away from them. So you want to avoid the offer until the very end of this conversation. And if you're new to this, by offer, what I mean is you want to avoid saying, all right, and sign up for my Influencer Academy, and it's going to be, 30-day money back guarantee, right? All those words, even though they're good and positive, they put our brains and our bodies into a different state. You don't want that. First thing that you want, most important thing that you want, is you want to give value to your community. That's it. Just give value. right? I mean, how hard is that? The biggest problem you're going to face, in my opinion, is just getting out of your own way so that you can actually go out there and add value to people's lives. That's going to be the most important thing, I think. So we talk about a value webinar where you're just looking to impact people, no sales, okay? That's the key. Value webinars build impact and they let you test things out. That's really important because when you look at what can be done, the key thing here is with this webinar launch system, you don't always know what's going to win out. So you want to do tests. You want to do a webinar and you want to see how it works and see what people's response is. And then maybe you have to do another one before you transition to sales, okay? So value webinars let you test things out, build impact, okay? You're in, a value webinar right now. I'm giving you value and that's it. That's all. I'm not asking for anything except for you to do some work so that this work that I'm doing will have an impact in your life. Okay. Sales webinars are usually the last thing and they close the deal. That's it. So there are 4 phases to a webinar that we're going to unpack over the next couple of days. They are plan and create your webinar. This is what we're going to focus on today. Schedule and promote a webinar and hold it, which we will probably have tomorrow. And then pass out or binge on Game of Thrones, which we will I'll probably do tonight. So I'm going to do that early. All right, today we're focusing on planning and creating a value webinar. Have you put an ask out in your community? Because I want to know, do you have a topic for your first webinar? All right, so I'm going to look over here in comments. And if you want, what you can do is you can click the little, you can click the little YouTube thing if you're watching this live and head over to YouTube and leave a comment over there. Or you can actually post a comment in the course itself, in the Kajabi course, and I'll see it there. Okay. Ruben is telling me all is well. Lewis telling me all is well. Fantastic. Thank you guys. All right, if you got any questions, post them in there. But the most important thing that we need to do right off of the bat is make sure that you have a topic. And I'm going to talk about that right now. But you got to have a topic because that's how you impact, right? You got to have something that you are going to share with them. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that what you're sharing with them is what they need. So that's why in the previous video we talked about an ask. We said ask and listen. You put an ask out there, a survey. Simple link, get it out there. Ask in Facebook, ask in your email. Just get something out there to see what people need. Then you got to listen, right? And you got to listen to your industry and the talk and all of these things to see what are the force multipliers? What's the language people use? You got to try to figure out some way to connect what you are going to offer with what they need. And you don't want to just go blind and be like, hey, let's do a topic on X. And people don't care. That kind of sucks, right? I've had webinars. I did this one VR webinar. It was like designing or concept art for virtual reality. And it was crickets. I think like 100 people subscribed to that. And I was like, oh, but you know what that did? That saved me from launching a class and spending 2 weeks on a class that wasn't going to sell because I'd misjudged the market. I thought it was cool because I was an expert and I'm like, this is awesome. I love VR. I love concept. Let's put those two together. That's like peanut butter and chocolate. How can you get better than that? Well, somebody's allergic to chocolate or peanut butter, right? Or something of that nature. Now it's a totally different conversation. You got to make sure that what you're putting out matches what they need. So you got to get that ask out there. And so let's talk about a couple of misconceptions. I'm not a real expert. Someone's already teaching it. It has to be perfect. Yeah, right. When is it going to be perfect, right? And if somebody's teaching this already, that means they've proven your market. And I'm not a real expert. That's what I want to talk about today, because you know what? The truth is people don't care about you. You don't care about me. Not in, the way that you're going to just like suddenly give me $500 because I have, beautiful eyes. It's not going to happen, right? It's not what it's about. People care about what they need. They care about their outcome. So they care about you to the extent that you provide an outcome for them. Over time, you build a connection, right? But in the beginning and for a long time, it's all about the outcome you provide. If you provide an outcome, great, let's have a conversation. Let's go out to lunch. Let's see I'll buy your lunch. Let's see what can happen from there, right? But if you don't provide the outcome, I'm sorry, I got lots of things to do. Maybe I'll read your email, but you know what, I got to move on and I got to get this going, right? You've got to make sure that you keep this in mind, because as an expert, what we do is we're like, I've built all this skill, I'm this, but you know what? I tell this every single time I can. I know an artist out there that has 70,000 Instagram likes, can't sell a course. Do you know why? Because he's got his expert head up his behind. Because he's not thinking about the customer. He's thinking about the high school popularity contest. And the high school popularity contest will never win. They won't, right? There's this whole thing, influencer marketing. I don't believe in influencer marketing. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I believe in being an influencer. I believe in somebody who's a genuine thought leader, influencer, actually making a difference in their community by providing value and building the rapport, right? So if you're with me, if you're with that, let's keep going, right? But I want you to be an influencer, somebody who's making a difference in your industry, and that's not an expert. So it has nothing to do with your expertise. It has to do with, are you somebody who's going, who's moving in that direction and adding value? If you are, you're, whatever it takes. That's the value. The solution to this and to becoming an influencer, in my opinion, is having an awesome topic. All right, and I have 4 rules for having an awesome topic. You got to be relevant. You don't want to be with your expert head up your behind thinking about X, Y, and Z. You want to be relevant. So you've got to be doing asks. You've got to be doing things that are really moving through this industry and people are actually interested in. You got to be real, right? And let's take 2 seconds, because this whole idea of be real is really important. Because and I experienced this myself. I remember once this was like the last job I held. I was in this meeting and we had like all these luminaries, right? We had these really just great guys in the industry hanging around, mostly guys. I think it was like all guys. And, they were all talking about, well, we could do this, we could do that. It was for this one kind of online news portal that the company had bought, and they were wanting to go in this direction, and it all fizzled out, and eventually they did something else with it. But in this big meeting, they're like, we can all get online and we can do, X, Y, and Z, and I can share this and I can talk this. And I said to him, I said, look, because I had my expert hat on. I said, look, why would I go online and post my own work? Why would I post anything that I had done? Because I've already made my name for myself. So now anything I do, right, catch this, anything I do from this point on is just going to detract from that. Like, what was going on in my head? How far up my own behind did I have my expert head, right? Like, I had such a mindset of scarcity where it's like, I'm at the top. Now if I show anybody my work, they're just going to say you suck, And so I was not willing to go out there and be real. I was willing to go out there and be relevant, talk about the topics, demonstrate things that were important, but I wasn't willing to be real. And it wasn't until I learned how to be real that things really changed in my business and I was able to break through. Because that one thing of not being able to be real, I can't explain the amount of pain that caused. Just the amount of confusion and, the consultants, the coaches I went through, the therapists I went through to kind of get my head out of that mode, until I finally realized, that the journey is the thing, not the end result. The journey is the thing. And the people that are out there learning this, they know the journey is the thing because they're in the journey. Experts tend to get stuck at the result that they think they are supposed to have. Your job is to be real. Somebody who's real versus somebody who's, in an ivory tower with some accolades, this person who's real and talking to people from a real point of view is going to win every time. Every time. Over the ivory tower. Who cares about the ivory tower, right? You got to be real. And that's why I wanted you to see my face. That's the most important thing that you can do is be relevant, yes, be real, right? And then we want to focus on results. We want to make sure that you give a win for your customer, and that's really important. You got to have a win for them. You want to make sure that you're giving them wins all the time, right? I'm trying to debate whether or not I talk about this or not, this one topic. All right, so sometimes my wife and I, we have these problems, and they usually come after I've been focused on a thing for a long time, and my wife will just get very upset, and we'll have arguments all the time. And these are like hurricane season. They just last for like a week. And I remember one of my coaches saying that one of the most important things to a woman is attention. Not in a negative way, but the thing is we have to remember that feminine energy is different than masculine energy. Masculine energy doesn't crave attention in the same way. They kind of don't like attention. But feminine energy is about connection, and so they want attention. And so if I'm not giving my wife attention, then my wife sees that as a problem. She's like, if he's not giving me attention, that means there are problems in the relationship. Whereas I'm like, I got this problem over here, so I know I'm safe here. I'm not going to give any attention there. I'm going to focus all my attention there, because this is that's my thinking. My wife is like, no, that means there's a problem. and you have to remember that with your customers and with the people that you want to make a difference in, you've got to be giving them attention and giving them wins. This is the lesson I'm still learning. But with my wife, I've got to give wins. I've got to give attention. With customers, you've got to give them wins. You got to give them these moments where they become aware that they can actually achieve these things, right? So you've got to be focused on results, not on what you think people need. What are the results that gets you what you need out of a customer versus here, I'm just thinking like some dude and, whatever, screw it. I'm going to do what I think is right. Okay, fine. Well, focus on the results that your customer needs. You're going to create a win in their life. That's going to be the difference in this. Okay. The next thing, and this is what I want to dive deeper in today, is this idea of you want to stack your topic with a trend, right? I didn't even see that alliteration. Stack your topic with a trend. I love the alliteration of these things. What I want you to think about is this diagram, and I want you to kind of get in your own head about what's possible here. Okay, because this is your sweet spot. It's where you and your talents meet the customer and their desires and the trends that are out there making a difference and a movement in this industry. That's going to be really important for you. You've got to be able to find this sweet spot. See, most people think about it just like this. They're like, hey, I'm an expert. Hey, I got my customer. So this is my expertise. And this is my customer. And so I'll meet them somewhere in here. And that's okay. You can do something here. But if you want to turbocharge your impact, you kind of find a trend that's moving through here and making a massive difference in the entire industry, right? And if you can do that, then you move on to the next stage. So let me give you an example of that. An easy example is Uber, right? Apps. People were using apps, so people were on their apps. There's Uber, that's the U. The customer is people on their apps, on their phone, looking for it. And then the trend that was moving things forward was ride sharing and kind of really the sharing economy. And this was a massive intersection of elements, and Uber is now a $68 billion company, scandals aside. Toyota just invested $500 million in them. This is a place where you can make an impact, right? My sweet spot where I really made, my business, my impact out there was, me with my traditional skills and my digital and a little bit of my poetry, right? And then I was interested in the games and VFX and CG art. And what really happened was this program called ZBrush came out and started moving through there. And that became my sweet spot. That became the place where I knew I could build value out there in the industry and make a difference in people's lives. This is what I want you to be thinking about and looking for, is where your skills, your expertise, your mindset, your customers, and what trend is moving through here. If you're in games and VFX like I was right now, I would not, digital sculpting is not the thing to do. Get your butt over to Substance. Anything Substance does is now the biggest changer in the industry. ZBrush is, you missed the boat on that, right? It's too late. Get into Substance. The key component here, and the thing that I want you to really think about, is that when you find your sweet spot, you find the place where you build value. You find the place where you build value, that's where you make an impact. Okay, because you remember the circles, the two circles where it's you and the customer, you can build value there, but it's when you intersect it with a trend, that's where your value that you offer is it's multiplied. The impact you can make there is exponential. It's a massive change. I know an artist, a guy named James Raitosa, coming out of high school, focused on Substance. I'm going to talk gamer talk for a moment. So if you're not a gamer, bear with me. He learned the Substance Designer program, and he knew some basic modeling. Not basic, he's a pretty good hard surface modeler. And basically got a job, I think, at High Res Studios right out of high school. There's people graduated college, can't get a job. There's people who spent $100,000 on a college art education, can't get a job. Because college isn't the trend, right? You got to find the trend. You got to find the thing that's making a difference, and you got to build value where these three things intersect. That's what James did. He built value there, and he had these massive libraries of Substance Designer materials, really good ones, that he just put out for like $2. He didn't care about it. And that got him a job, and now he's at 343 Industries. Right? No college, no debt. You can go to college later if he wants to, save all his money, whatever. But he's got a job doing what he loves a couple of years out of high school. Great guy, had a great interview with him, really loved the conversation. I was incredibly impressed at his focus. But his success, whether he realized it or not, came because he got right into that sweet spot. And that's what I want you to do. Pick that topic that lets you do that, because once you pick that topic, you get into these areas where you can build value, right? So if we're looking here at this, Uber Black, Uber Eats. Now they're doing food delivery. Now they just bought an electric scooter company. They're going to let you do rides there. They're going into autonomous vehicles. I think they stopped that. That was a bit of a unwise process. Okay. Netflix. Look at it. This is another example of a company that decided to build value, and you are Netflix, right? This is you. There are apps out there, right? All Netflix did was take the app customers and the people who are interested in doing that and take advantage of streaming, and they've built value as a distribution hub. Then they added profiles so that I'm not looking at my daughter's kid movies all the time. I can go into my own and I can see all the Avenger films. And now they got into production, and now they're making a difference in production and producing their own work. And they got data on it from all the distribution work that they did here, so they're creating synergies. It's an unbelievably amazing company. What I did, because I always like to equate myself. Anytime I can equate myself with a $150 billion company is always a good day. So here's Ryan, here's the game industry, here's my specialty, right? And I built value around this company called ZBrush Workshop. I brought partners in to build up GAI, CAW, and then ultimately I built this into boot camps where we hire mentors that make a difference in students' lives, where people really get to focus for 4 months, really a year, but 4 months. I built subscription sites out of all of that, right? And I impacted, 10,000 students, over 10,000 students. That's pretty awesome. There's people out there at the top of the industry right now who watched my ZBrush tutorials years ago, and that got them into the industry. I want that impact for you. I want that impact for all of us, right? And you can do it. But you have to change your mindset from being expert to influencer. And you got to start doing things like webinars and value webinars to help get out there and make an impact in people's lives, right? That's going to be the key thing that we got to do. All right, so impact equals success. It's kind of the key component here. If you want to be successful at this, right, because we're in the webinar launch formula. If you want to be successful at launching these webinars, turning them into classes, you got to remember that impact is your goal. So where can you have the most impact? I want you to spend a second and think about this, right? What's your customer? Maybe you're in the game industry. Maybe you're a cook, right? Maybe you're in fitness. Maybe you're in diets, dietitian. Maybe you're a skier, a surfer, right? I was thinking about this with when I was taking surf lessons the other day. I was talking to him, I'm like, hey, how would you teach surf online? And he was like, I wouldn't. I had to laugh my ass off. I was like, that was a typical response. But then I was like, yeah, but then you have to get out here and, you constantly trade time for dollars. How could you do that? And he's like, well, I could hire people. And then I was like, yeah. And so if you hire people, then you become the kind of the head figure. So how could you go out there and spread your mission, right? And get out there and help impact people. And then he started thinking, okay, all right, I could do simple posturing, moving things around like this, right? How do you turn a board? Okay, how do you pop up? Simple little videos like that to help prime people before they get into the lesson. If you do that, create this whole free course that you could get before your surf lesson. So you sign up for a surf lesson and you're instantly taken to a free course. You can start to see all the basics. You get to see what to expect. He'd take over Laguna because he had superior marketing to everybody else. Because it's freaky for people to start new things. It's so scary, I can remember the first couple of times I went out to surf and I was learning how to surf, there's a saying, you got to hold your, you get out there and it's like, puckering up a little bit. Okay, what's going to happen? Are there sharks? Are there not sharks? Am I going to hit the ground? Am I going to, get sucked under a wave? Is there going to be like some, I don't know, some sinkhole suddenly appear underneath the Pacific Ocean and now I fall into a little whirlpool, right? All kinds of things happen because, we all know people that bad things have happened to, right? I have friends that have died in the water. So going out there is an issue. We all have seen bad things happen to people. So when we're starting a new project, we have some fear, right? It doesn't have to be surfing. It could be cooking. We have some fear about things. So if you can be the person that assuages that fear, you win. That's how it works. That's what I want you to do. Go out there, be that person, right? So let's get back in. Look for where that trend is so that you can start to really make a difference here. And in this case, if we were talking about the surfer lesson, the trend for the most part is streaming video as well. Streaming video is so incredibly important now that if a surfer was to go out there and take advantage of that and build some free training, they'll dominate the marketplace. Okay, skiing, the same thing. Like, how do you teach that online, or how do you get people primed for it, right? Or how do you just start to create it? So maybe you're an artist and you want to do painting, and so here you are, you're this painter, and your customer is in Idaho and nobody around them paints, and streaming video is the way to go. And so you just mine this connection with them and build value inside that community to really make a difference. But sit down and think about what are the trends that are moving in there. And it could be as simple as, hey, streaming video is what your customers are watching today. It's the dominant form of communication. Sit down, grab a screenshot of this, and tell me where could your sweet spot be? So while you're here, I'd love it. Tell me what trends are going on in your industry right now. Just leave a comment over there on YouTube or over below this video, and I'm going to check those here in just a second. But let me know what trends are going on in here, and I was just reading through someone who's having one issue logging in, and then go from there. So yeah, Ruben, modeling fundamentals, open class. I like that, Ruben. So, all right, what's the trend? Let me know. What's the thing that's making a difference in your industry that you can kind of ride that wave on? But keep in mind, you know, nothing starts until you do. So now we're going to get to the meat of the show today. How do we start? Now, we're about a half hour in, and I have quite a few more slides to show you. But really, this is a webinar about how to create a successful webinar. And I will have a what do we call it? A swipe file available for you. I've created a simple swipe file of this presentation, so you can download this and then just make it your own, right? I found that to be probably the most important, most impactful way to do things is grab copy from people and make it your own. Like that Austin Keloid, I forgot his name, but Steal Like an Artist. That's an incredibly powerful way for us to do it, to get in there and see how we can kind of put our structure in there and really make a difference, you know, in our own abilities just by using other people's scaffolding. So got to get this swipe file. We're going to have that. But right now, let's talk about the basic steps for setting up a webinar, a value webinar, really. You know, that's the kind of key. So the first thing that I want you to do is you've got to just introduce yourself. That's the first step. So you make a slight introduction to yourself. I'm going to explain each one of these. You introduce the problem. You talk about the story of your struggle. You make sure that your story is relevant to the problem. So it's not a story about, you know, your vacation. It's a story about, you know, your struggle. Then you want to talk about the results, right? And a lot of people screw this up and they think it has to be their results. But don't worry, that's not true. Then this is really key. Like, this is probably the most important thing out there for me, is you got to have some kind of myth buster out there. And hint, I had a myth buster out there. And the myth buster involved Uber and Netflix. And that was me trying to change the way that you thought about experts to realize that the most important thing that you can do is capitalize on trends. Make your topic focused on trends, and there's where your impact lies. But you've got to think about a myth that you can bust. Then you explain your solution, common mistakes they make, and you have a call to action. That's it, right? 8 simple steps for you. So let's unpack these simple steps and see if we can't tell them a little bit more. The intro is real simple. The intro is your elevator pitch. Hi, my name is Ryan Kingsline. Over the last few years, I've launched over 100 online classes and generated multiple 7 figures. I'd like to teach you how. It's real basic, real simple. You're not really trying to make a big difference in anything. You're just trying to introduce who you are. You want to then talk about the problem that they're going to face. And you want to try to get to the core problem. So it's, for example, in one of my courses, it's, do you want to break out of the 9 to 5 and take control of your life? Do you want to launch an online course but not sure how? Maybe you've tried before but no one showed up, okay? The problem is really an important element to this entire conversation. And so if you have problems defining the problem people have, this is what I always recommend that people do. You fill out this kind of PAS journal entry. So you write on a piece of paper, you're going to write like a piece of paper here, and you're going to write problem. And then you write a paragraph and a paragraph and maybe another paragraph. Then you write agitate. And then you write, well, this problem causes me to, and then I do, and then it leads to, and then you come down and you're like, I need more room. And then write, what's the solution, right? And here we go. You can say, okay, and so the solution is do this. And then the solution was that. And you just write a couple of paragraphs. Just get out there and try to change your mode a little bit and use this simple. This is an old marketing term. You establish the problem, you agitate around the problem, and then you present the customer with a solution. But I like to do this just as a simple journaling method. The problem is this causes this problem, it causes this problem, it causes this problem, it leads to this, it leads to that. And the solution is, and just write for a couple of paragraphs about what the solution is. That's it. You just want to get out there and try to figure out, a little bit about what problems could lie for people. The common misconceptions or mistakes that people make is they forget to edit the problem down to one paragraph. So if you remember here, my problem's pretty simple. My problem is, do you want to break out of the 9-to-5 and take control of your life? That's the kind of essential problem that I have. Then the other problem I have is, you tried to create a course before, but no one showed up. All right, well, let me show you how. So you've got to edit your problem down to one paragraph. You've got to make sure that whatever this problem is that you're discovering, it's connecting with the ask. Make sure that you're solving problems that people really want solved. So you don't want to be solving, let's say, the way I would put it in my world, you don't want to be solving ZBrush problems when the big problem out there is this software called Substance Designer and Substance Painter. Make a difference where you can make a difference. And that's, you got to know what people really need. Okay. And then the other thing is people aren't specific enough. They're kind of esoteric and vague in their language of what the real problem is. Are you feeling sad? Weepy-eyed? Try to get some specificity in there to help people understand, that you're connecting and you understand it. Okay. Then you want to put together your story. And the story can be your struggle with the problem, right? So for example, the story of your struggle with the problem could be, I had a dream job, but my boss threatened to fire me 3 times. And then when my wife told me she was pregnant, that was it. It was do or die time, right? So in the Business to the Power of You course, the course where I teach people how to launch an online course, the problem that I saw people had is they wanted to break out of the trading time for dollars, and they wanted to build kind of their own legacy. And so, most of us are working for other people to kind of make, to develop enough skills, and we're using other people, and we're teaching in other schools to make an impact. Whereas I'm telling people now today, don't work at other schools, even my teachers. I'm like, don't work with me anymore if you don't want to. Go out there and launch your enterprise. This is how you do it. Go out there and make a difference in the world from kind of your perspective, right? Stop trading time for dollars. But, I need to give them my story as well. Like at one point, all I wanted to do was make a difference in this particular area of the world, of the art world. And, I told my boss, like, I don't care about money, pay me whatever you think you can pay me. I just want to make a difference. But then a month after doing that, is actually 2 weeks after doing that, he threatened to fire me. And I was like, holy crap, what do I do now? I worked too hard for this much lack of control over my own financial destiny. And that's a big trigger for me. So I was like, that's not going to happen. I'm going to get control over this one way or another. And it's not going to be with this guy who doesn't have his act together. There's a story in my biography that connects with people trying to trade out of the 9-to-5. So what is your story that connects with people and helps them see, how to change their life, so to speak, okay? What's the elements there? Let's see, is there a scene in the webinar here where we talk about that? Yes, okay. Let's break out of this. I'm gonna come through, which slide am I on right now? I'm on 28. Okay, and let's open up yesterday's webinar. All right, so in yesterday's webinar, which is another value webinar, I was basically like, hey, you're in the right place if, these are qualifiers. And then I was like, hey, who am I? I'm an artist. I love to sculpt more than anything else, and this is my experience. So this is basically the story of my journey. This was exactly what, I needed to communicate in the very first part of my connection with people is, what's the story? What's the relevant part of this conversation? And so the key thing to keep in mind about this is when you're thinking about the story and the story that's relevant to it, you want to be journaling, okay? Start writing down and being like, oh, well, there was this event and there was that thing that happened, but you got to come up with a compelling story that's going to connect with people and help make a difference. Okay, the big problems that people make in this when they're making their stories is they sanitize it. Stop sanitizing it. Okay, be real. Get raw if you have to, right? But you've got to be real. Don't sanitize it. So it's not pretty to talk about a boss firing me, right? But that's what happened. And I got to be real, and I got to be real about the pain that made in my life, because it was that pain that prompted me to build my business. And today I can be more grateful to this guy, because I would have never reached this level if this person hadn't had everything kind of screwed up for them for that period of time. So that was a blessing for me, for me to rise up to where I am today, to be able to make the impact that I am able to make today. Whereas over there, I would have never been able to do this. So don't sanitize it. Be real about this. Tell her the truth. Show emotion in this. You got to show emotion in this. If you don't, people feel like you're hiding something. You might be just protecting yourself and, a little not very confident. But have you ever seen those people walk into a room who aren't very confident? Do they look like they're not very confident, or do they look like something else? Most of the time, people who are feeling kind of a little uncomfortable and they're holding themselves back, they look stuck up. They look like they're too good. I'm definitely somebody, I don't like to walk into a room. I like to withhold myself. I like to be on camera here and I give value to you guys and whatnot. But outside of the camera, I'm quite reserved. But when I walk into a room, I know that there are people that will think I'm a little reserved. I'm a little stuck up. I'm a little, but it's not that. It's just I'm very reserved. I'm very uncomfortable in social situations sometimes. You got to be real here with your customers, on camera, with the people that you want to impact, because if you're not, they're going to feel like you're not really with them, and they're going to feel that disconnect, and that's not going to work, right? So don't sanitize it. Don't depersonalize this. Talk about it from your perspective. Make sure that you are keeping it relevant and that you are connecting it with them. You're telling stories that really show that you are there and prevalent in people's lives, right? And the other mistake that people make is they don't edit it down. So journal, but edit it down. Keep it simple. If nothing else, just get it down into some simple bullets, right? So you can see in my particular case, it's just like, here I am, and it's 4 bullets, and that's it, right? I generated over 6 million. I've helped 10,000. I've created 100 courses. I'm an artist. I love to sculpt more than anything else. Okay, this is what I would consider a result, right? But there you go. So let's get ourselves back here a little bit and make sure. I'm going to grab that slide and let's come back here to this, and let's do some impromptu editing. So we've talked a little bit about what we've got going on here. We've talked about your intro, which is simple, the problem, which is simple, and the story, which is simple. You journal about the story. You do the PAS, problem, agitate, solution, about to try to get the problem out of your head. And the intro can be really simple. Just like, hey, my name's Ryan Kingsland. It's not a big deal. I run this business, that business, this business. 30-second pitch, remember? All right. Now, the next element that we're going to get into is the results. Then we're going to unpack the myth busting, and then we're going to talk solution and, common mistakes and the call to action. Okay. So and I'm going to specifically ask you to do something. Let's talk about results right now. So if we're looking at what we want students to do and people who are watching this, if we want a webinar to win, then you've got to have some proof. Okay? What are the results that you've gotten, or that your students have gotten, or that your interviewees have gotten? Okay, the common mistakes that people make when we get to this results section is that they think it has to be my results. It has to be something I can do 100% on my own. Think about the book Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. That book has influenced millions of people. Did Napoleon Hill write that book after he was a millionaire? Yes or no? Did he write that after he was a millionaire? No. What did he do? He interviewed a bunch of millionaires. So he was not a millionaire. He interviewed a bunch of millionaires and he took the secrets from them. Okay. Well, he had an impact on the world because the action that he did, he's in what I would consider an influencer, is he went looking for the results so that he could build them in his life. But the primary thing he did was help us see the processes. Okay, what about Tim Ferriss? Tim Ferriss has certainly achieved things in his life, but if you go to his last book, The Tools of Titans, that's all stuff other people have done. You look at Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins will go on and say, you know, he's pulled things from people, right? There's elements of his thing called Date with Destiny. There's elements of it that sound like stuff from Alison Armstrong. And she's got this great book called Queen's Code and another one, The Keys to the Kingdom. My wife and I are going through that right now. So is it your results, or do you kind of learn to take knowledge from other people and then turn that into results and case studies for your people? There's a big difference there. But the key thing is it doesn't have to be your results. You do have to have a result, though. And so this is a topic, a concept I want to give you, because when we talk about results, I want you to think about it differently. You do have to have some proof. There's no question. There's no question that you got to have something out there that you have achieved, right? So you got to work towards that. But the problem that we get into as experts is we're like, I'm going to achieve, I'm going to achieve, I'm going to achieve. Okay? But that's not the way it's going to work, because you have to achieve, you have to invest years. At least if you're going to achieve at the level that I like to achieve, you invest years. So the concept I want to give you is this idea of a T-shaped person. It's not my idea, but the idea of a T-shaped person goes a little bit like this. It says, hey, I have deep dived into this one area and I am really good here. I've gone all the way down, but this is all the other areas of stuff that I have done. Now, most entrepreneurs and people who are out there teaching and making a difference, they're usually good in one or two of these, and then they have a broad swath of knowledge. So for example, for me, I'm pretty solid. I've done a massive dive into the digital art spectrum and specifically sculpting, right? But I've also done a massive dive over here into the business, the marketing, and all of that for influencers. I've launched over 100 online courses, and in that process done, that's 100 successful. I launched a heck of a lot more that weren't successful. And I have case studies, and I've really studied to see what it makes a difference in people's lives. What you guys are watching right now, the webinar launch formula, comes directly out of that. So I'm good at this and I'm good at this, but am I good at SEO, which is a particular part of marketing? Am I good at accounting? No. These aren't my expertise. This is not something that I am an expert at. But these are all things that I can add value to the world in when I'm thinking about what kind of course I want to do and the results that I can talk about. Okay? So you have results in your life, and an influencer, they think about things differently. They think about how they can take their result and they can leverage that out into the world to impact a larger group of people. So even in my ZBrush experience, I leveraged that out to see how can I make a difference in people in the game arts, in all spectrums. You know, I'm not an environment artist, but I know absolutely what it takes to get an environment artist job and a bunch of other jobs in there. So I started leveraging my skills and my abilities and my knowledge to help making a difference in environment artists and concept artists and all of these areas, right? You're more than just that little skill that you've spent your life perfecting. I shouldn't call it a little skill. It's a big skill. But think of yourself like this as a T-shaped person, okay? You have more out there that you can, more value that you can add to the universe than just that one thing. And I just want to put that bug in your ear because, you know, once you start to think about yourself that way, right? Like the example I love is Neil Patel. Neil Patel was amazing at SEO and he pulled that out into this big empire where he's #1 and #2 for digital marketing, if you Google it. Does he know everything about email marketing? Does he know everything about influencer marketing? No, but he's willing to be somebody who goes out there to make a difference and to lead, right? And you can too. You can do it if you're willing to put yourself out there, okay? You've got to, in a big sense, get out there and figure out like what are the myths in your industry, right? So for example, I want you guys to create an online course, and the myth that's out there for online courses is I'm not a real expert yet. That's a big issue. So how do I help people who are having that problem where it's like, hey, it has to be perfect, but it's not. You know, because I'm always struggling. I'm always trying to make this thing work. Well, you've got to relax on yourself and understand, you know, that. And I go on and I kind of explain it, right? So this is the myth. You got to be real. Someone's teaching it and it has to be perfect and all of that. So the way that I bust that myth is I say, the truth is, you know, people don't care about you. They just don't. They care about themselves and the outcome that they need. And for good reason. They got family, they got, you know, time is limited. Okay? So it doesn't matter if you're an expert because they don't care about the expert, they care about themselves. And once you get that, then you can actually serve that customer, right? You can serve that person, you can make a difference in their life, whether you're in fitness or diet, whether you're a ZBrush or a game artist, whatever it is that you're doing, chances are you're coming here and you're thinking, expert, 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 expert. No. What's the outcome your customer wants? You figure that out. You unlocked this entire game because now you know how to provide value to somebody. And when you provide value to somebody, you make a difference in their life. You win. I mean, that's it. That's what you need to do. Make a difference. So you've got to be able to bust through this to kind of see what people need, give them just the outcomes and focus on them, not us, okay? So again, if we continue the myth busting, the way that you make a difference and you have this win is you pick your awesome topic, okay? And the best way to pick an awesome topic is you stack it with a trend and you find your sweet spot. Because once you find your sweet spot, well, then you just come in here and you build value right there. Just like Netflix. They're not just distributor, they're producer. Just like Uber, right? Just like Apple, just like all the big companies out there, and just like you. Find your sweet spot, build value in there, and then it doesn't matter if you are an expert or not, because you can make a difference. Yeah? So it's a little meta. It's like I'm teaching you a webinar. I'm teaching you a webinar on how to have an awesome webinar, and I'm going through the processes of it in the webinar. So I hope you're with me on this, and that everything's kind of gelling. I want you now to start thinking about questions because we are getting to the point. So start posting any questions that you have in the chat. I'm looking over there because that's where the chat is. Post any questions that you have so we can answer those in the Q&A, and let's get moving. Okay, so what myth can you bust? right? Really important. I want to know, what myth can you bust that's going to make a difference? Keep in mind that this can take many different forms, but the key thing that you want to do is you want to rethink their assumptions. You want people to you want to break their frame. And then in breaking their frame, you demonstrate that you can add value to that frame. That's the most important concept that you can get, right? Is just figure out how you've got this frame, how you can break it, and how you can make a difference, okay? What myth can you bust? Ask yourself these questions. What assumptions did I have when I was beginning? What mistake cost me the most when I was beginning, right? What is one piece of advice I give most often? You know, I want to teach you how to launch an online course. The biggest mistake I made, and it cost me a lot emotionally and physically, was thinking I had to be the expert and know everything. I'm devoted to it. I'm devoted to telling you, don't do that. This is the biggest mistake I made. That's my mistake. So when you were learning your area, you were learning cooking, right? What was the biggest mistake you made? Let's take something totally outside of this. Let's imagine that we are talking about being the world's greatest dad, right? We have this course. It's a course I love to present and kind of document. You're going to make the world's greatest dad course. What's the biggest myth that you had on your path to becoming the world's greatest dad, or to researching the world's greatest dad, right? Because you probably don't see yourself as the world's greatest dad. I certainly don't. But I do feel like we could create a course on this by researching and talking to dads and building a collective of what dads out there really think would be the best dad, okay? We could build that course. So what would be the myths that I personally would have that the world's greatest dad has to live up to? Well, one of them would be he can't sedate. He's always got to be present for his kids, always got to be there and answering things, can never be upset at them, right? Well, you know, I've been around the block now enough to know that's all hogwash, right? You know, part of the job is getting upset so that they know what's good and what's not good. You know, they're trying everything. And with my little girl, who's like an angel and always tries to do things the right way, upset doesn't necessarily work with her. With my boy, who's a hellion and out there to break everything, and you tell him not to do something and he goes right to the edge. And he's like, is this still bad? Is this still bad? I don't know, you know? So, you know, it's natural. You got to give yourself permission to have your emotions as a dad. And so this is the myth. You have to be perfect. You have to be this. You have to be that. No, you have to allow your emotions. And if you get upset, you can always come back and talk and say, this is what upset me. And you teach your kids how to work through it, right? That's an example of myth busting. So what assumptions did I have in the beginning? I had to be the perfect dad. I had to always be present. I could never, you know, get upset. Okay. What mistakes cost me the most when I was beginning? You know, most of those probably had to do with their mother. So had to do with my attitude towards their mother and things I could have done to make their mother's life better. All right. So you could have a whole module in this course of the world's greatest dad, how to treat the mother. And I'm just coming up with this on the fly. But that's the kind of thing I want you to do, is just think that through and start to figure out what you could, what myths that exist and how you could advise people of those now to make their lives better. The next step, right? So if we break through this again, and I think I can post that's still in there. Yeah. So if we come back to this, we have talked about the introduction, the problem, the story, the results, the myth. Okay. We've done all this work, and I know we've been going for a long time, so thank you so much for being here and for walking through this. Okay, but now we got to talk about how you present your solution. So we had the intro, the 30-second pitch, we had the problem, and you know, you can use the PAS to do that. We had the story, you know, and this you can just make sure it's relevant. That's the most important. We had the results, right? And the results don't necessarily need to be yours. They can be people that you've interviewed. Then there is the myth that you're going to bust, and then there's your solution. Your solution, which is going to be your step-by-step solution. And what you are looking at right now is literally my solution. My solution to creating and planning a webinar is these 8 steps. And if you do these 8 steps, you win, right? The solution's just your step-by-step. It's your framework. It's your process for getting someone from A to Z. Another key component here is that this is a fantastic time for you to break out the screen share. In my industry, where I built multiple 7 figures, almost all of that screen share. If you are an artist or creative or somebody who can do their work demonstrated in software and on the computer, you are literally, if you do not launch a class right now, I don't know how to help you. I don't know what's wrong, because you're sitting on the most valuable asset you have. Go out there, make a difference in people's lives by showing them how to get something done. Step by step. Step by freaking step. Show them the way to get it done. That's the most important thing you got to do, right? Get out there, have a solution for them. And if you don't have a solution like a framework, who cares? Get out there and show them how to make this happen. Okay? You can't just show them though, you know? Make sure that as you're doing this and you're walking through this process, you're not winging it. These are common mistakes that people make. They wing it. So they get online and they're like, hey, and I'll talk about this. And it's very informal. Like, I believe in informal, but I believe in presentation too. So have your slides ready. Don't just wing it. If you're winging it, people will know it and it'll create a little dissonance. Have some structure. Have some ad lib is cool, right? I ad lib all the time. But I like to ad lib within relevance, and then I like to bring myself back to structure. Because again, it's not about me. It's about the customer. So you want to make sure that you're using their time wisely. They're taking time out of their day to watch this webinar. You've got to give them structure. One of the biggest mistakes, every webinar I've ever been in where it tanked, and where the class, I could have 1,000 people sign up for the webinar, which I've had happen, and I've had 10 people sign up for the class. And the reason why? The person who was doing the webinar was winging it. That's it. They got on and they winged it, and then everybody was like, what the hell? And they left halfway through, and you know, it got 10 people when it should have gotten 30 people, right? And you know, that's a significant difference in money that goes to your family and goes to, you know, your life, right? You can do a lot with that difference. It's a third of what you could have made. So you've got to make sure, don't wing it, have structure to it, practice it, and you know, prepare it. I have structure to these. I spend time before getting my head in the mindset, in the game, to really do this. Okay. The other mistake that people make is they don't focus on that win, right? So this is part of winging it, but you've got to have one thing that people are going to get out of it. And this is going to go into the call to action. Okay. The other problem is that you get into theory land. Everything is kind of, you know, a little boring, and you're high level, way too high level. And then there's no stories. It's not personalized, right? And just too techie, you know, turning people off. Those are all really big mistakes that we make, and we get out there and we do this, okay? Now, you remember, we needed to present an action, a solution, and then we needed, after we presented the solution, we needed to give them a call to action, okay? So I'm going to give you your call to action, because we're right up there at an hour. It's one thing I want you to do, okay? You willing to do this one thing with me? I want you to grab this swipe file. This one that is on this link. I'm going to give you this link here in just a second in the slideshow. And start putting your webinar together. Fill it out. You just need to put bullet points in. You don't need to get in there too much. And I left some of my story and some of my stuff in there. Grab this webinar, this slideshow. Start writing and filling in your elements. Fill in your story. Fill in the myth. Fill in the results that you've got. Fill in your solution, your step 1, right? And in there, I break it down where it's like, here's step one, and then here's step one, step by step, misconceptions of step one, and any supporting points. And, you know, I give you some framework to do that. So let me grab some water here. The most important thing for you to do right now, download this. Whew, talking for an hour will do that. Download this and start to input your own data. Steal it, make it yours. Okay, let's get you looking at the slideshow. I want you to download that. That's the short file there, goo.gl/lowercase q, uppercase y, uppercase e, 2, lowercase e, uppercase j. That's a lot, right? Should have made that easier. But anyways, right now you can just grab that, type that in. I'll leave that up for a little bit. And I want you to create a webinar, a webinar that starts to establish the structure here, okay? Charlie, you got the link, let me know. And let me come in through here and ask, check your questions real quick. Charlie saying, hey, yeah, I guess the myth is that there is a magical course where the only course is living it. Yeah, right? All right, you got the link. Awesome. Okay, let me go through here. Charlie, great. And okay, Charlie's using advice for setting up a virtual reality arcade, developing bespoke 3D scans of my town people to experience them. Awesome. That's great. And then let me check in the course itself. Ruben is looking to make an impact with Substance Designer, which is a software out there. His first webinar, though, is Modeling Fundamentals Open Class. So this is a very important note. I want to talk to Ruben for 1 second here, because this is one of the fundamental mistakes that people make. We get in there and we know where the impact is, but we go back to our comfort zone. So Ruben has this area where he knows there's impact in the industry, but he's going to go do a course that's basically his comfort zone. So you can do it, but you're not going to build an empire right away that way. And in fact, you're just not going to build an empire. The way you build an empire is where these three things intersect: you, customer, and the trend or the big movement happening in the industry. That's where you build the most value. And so Ruben is saying, hey, I'm going to come back. I'm going to take this course that's like an open course on beginning modeling. I never recommend that. I never recommend that you start with what we would consider the lower end stuff. I always recommend you start with the higher end stuff. Think about it this way. If what would happen if Gucci, or let's say Louis Vuitton, had a $50 handbag next to their $2,500 handbag? Which are people going to buy, right? There's going to definitely be some people that buy this one, but this one's definitely going to start to erode away, especially if there's not much of a difference between the two. It's going to start to erode it away, right? And it'll erode their brand. And so it won't be the same high-end brand as Louis Vuitton bags, where there are thousands of dollars out there, you know. If you want to be on the smaller end, I get it, but be brave. Take a risk. Make a difference out there in the area where people need that difference to be made. Don't stay in your comfort zone for too long, because it's not going to have the impact that you ultimately can make and you're going to want to make. Okay? All right, let me give you this one more time. There's the link. Make sure you type that in, you download that, and you start creating your webinar and get ready for tomorrow. We are going to have another lecture tomorrow at 1 p.m. Deal? All right, I will see you there. Thank you so much for being here and for taking part in this. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, ciao.